Do you think you were kicked off Twitter just because of the actions of, let's say, an unthinking algorithm that detected an unauthorized word or something, and that so it pulled you? Or do you think that there was actually a human who might have known about your anti-war and anti-regime views, and that you were, a political casualty?
I think definitely, because the word that I use, which is not a polite word, but it's a word that's used on Twitter thousands of times a day, and then one of the many people might laugh at me, but several times I did attempt to appeal, and one of the many appeals, I just on that one day sent just a sample of how many times that word is used with impunity. So these aren't objective algorithms that seek out words and punish people for them. Otherwise, you wouldn't see so many people with impunity being able to call, for example, for Rand Paul's neighbor to make another comeback and return to, the scene of the crime, finish it off. And we see these things over and over, and there are many, many other examples. So I think what happened, I had a couple of brief suspensions before that for, again, very minor things. I came to the defense of Peter Van Buren, who was a former State Department official. He wrote the fantastic book, We Meant Well, about his stint in Iraq and what an absolute disaster our policies were there. I came to his aid when the blue check journalist Twitter people came after him, and that gave me a brief suspension. I think that may have landed me on the radar. And by the way, Scott Horton did the same thing at the time with Peter Van Buren, and he was eventually banned as Scott Horton. So I think when you do something, when you stick your neck out on something, especially that the blue checks don't like, then you're on the radar screen, then you're targeted, and any other violation after that, they can use that justification to deplatform you permanently.
Now, did Twitter send you one of those creepy demands where they say, look, if you remove the offending tweet, we'll let you back on?
They did for I think my first suspension, I believe it was. And it was, as I remember, and this was going back probably to 2018, I probably did delete the tweet because it wasn't a hill I wanted to die on. I think I probably just called someone a jerk or something. I don't think it was any stronger than that. I wasn't making a deep philosophical point, so I said, okay, whatever. But then, of course, really, I mean, that just eggs them on. Oh, okay, it's very Soviet. Oh, okay, now we know how to push this guy's buttons, and there you have it. I mean, this whole thing that you have to do is self-denunciation. Forget about the Soviets. It's like the Chinese Cultural Revolution, right? You have to put your head down and beg for forgiveness from your colleagues, from the higher up. It's pretty fixed up.
Well, I think one effect of social media is there's actually less debate over the U.S. role in Ukraine than there was over the U.S. invasion of Iraq. In other words, there's more of a uniparty lockstep. There's more conformity, more rigid conformity. And I think it's very unhealthy. There's this sort of forced consensus. One Substack writer I like called it a creepy enforced consensus. And ironically, rather than fostering a broader debate, more perspectives, it seems like social media has actually narrowed it.
It has, and that's because social media has gotten in bed with the government, with the U.S. government, with the CIA, with the, intelligence community. I call myself an advocacy analyst. I advocate for the philosophy of non-intervention, non-interventionism, but I still consider myself an analyst. So when this started, I began, through the Ron Paul Institute, we began following a broad range of accounts, many of them pro-Ukraine, many of them pro-Russia, because the truth obviously is in churning through everything available. And what we noticed, our media team at the Institute, what we noticed was that, the pro-Ukraine Twitter accounts, often very aggressive as well, they stayed. There was no problem. But one by one, the more objective or the more pro-Russia ones just began to disappear. And so as the days went on from the beginning of the conflict in February 24th, it was heavily skewed toward the pro-Ukraine. And if you're an analyst, if you're looking for the truth, rather than to have your preconceived notions reinforced by the narrative, then that makes it very problematic. as Pontius Pilate said, what is truth?